Coming up on Lawmakers, GBI Director Vernon Keenan talks about Georgia's new meth force. Budget briefings continue at the Capitol. And Friday is the 32nd anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision. We'll have the latest on abortion legislation pending in the legislature. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Wandy Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, Georgia's Department of Revenue responds to charges of stolen license plates.
And new legislation that could require pickup truck drivers to buckle up. But our lead story tonight, budget hearings continue with the needs of Georgia's university system. Presenting the budget request for the Board of Regents today, Interim Chancellor Corliss Cummings told the Joint Appropriations Committee that the university system is proud of a record enrollment of students with strong academic backgrounds. One university system request is for money to support the governor's proposal to recruit high-performance principals to serve needs improvement schools.
Georgia's Leadership Institute for School Improvement provides unique leadership development programs that blend best practices from business and education to enable school leaders to drive student success. Over 5,400 such leaders have been trained since 2002. With the $1.5 million in new funds for the Leadership Institute, we'll be able to allow an additional 840 educational leaders to participate in the successful Leadership Institute for School Improvement program.
Like other state agencies, the Board of Regents is requesting a 4% salary increase for its 35,000 faculty and staff members at the 35 colleges and universities across the state. Representative Bob Smith asked how this raise would impact employees at all levels.
4% for $300,000 salaried employees as opposed to 4% for a $20,000 employee is quite a large difference. Is there some provision for helping those at the lower end of the salary spectrum?
Okay. We have two things. First, realize that we allocate all salary increases on merit, and so if you're not performing well, quite frankly, you could get a 0% increase. If you are performing well, you could get the 4%. We also look at the salary levels of our employees. We look at market data, etc., to try to ensure that people are being paid appropriately for the job and the location that they are located in.
The university system's 2007 budget includes almost $2 billion in state funds.
Department of Technical and Adult Education Commissioner Mike Vollmer was in the unique position today of asking for no additional money for the DTAE 2007 budget. This is because his department negotiated a 2-year budget last year. Vollmer was questioned about a 3% decline in enrollment at technical schools last year, which he says is attributable in part to changes to the Hope Scholarship.
The Hope Commission put a cap on the number of hours a student can take. Why is that important? That's important because if I'm waiting to get into a nursing program, for instance, I may, if I'm not penalized, I may take courses because I'm not being penalized for them. Now I know that all Hope will pay is 95 hours. So I call it churning. We're not seeing the churning any longer. I'm in there. I'm in to get my education. I'm going to finish my degree, and I know the clock is running from the time I start.
Before Commissioner Vollmer began his presentation this morning, he distributed guides to the state's DTA faculty and facilities. This drew some good-natured ribbing from the Senate Appropriations Chair.
I know your budget can stand a few cuts because of all the paper you're handing out. Obviously, you're not hurting for supplies and print. And so,
we appreciate you noticing that, Mr. Chairman.
That should be worth about $1 million cut.
The DTAE is not expecting cuts or additions to its proposed $300 million budget.
Today, 3 Senate Democrats announced the new bill, Senate Bill 437, which would allow for the teaching of the Bible in public schools. With education topping the agenda for many legislators this session, the senators said they expect this bill to pass with bipartisan support.
This bill that we're proposing is to propose an academic study of the Bible in Georgia's public schools. will be an elective course.
And that's what this bill is about, is to clear up any confusion there is in the sense of what is constitutional in our public schools to have this academic study of the Bible.
Senators Goldenstoner and Reed cited the immense impact of the Bible on Western culture as the reason for promoting its study in public schools. The senators identified two important criteria for potential curriculum. First, that it be constitutional, and second, that it be academically rigorous.
You might ask, why are we doing this bill? Very simply, I will tell you I'm a history major. I understand very clearly the impact the Bible has had on our civilization, on history, on music, art, literature. It's had a huge impact on society. And we think it very important that we introduce this bill today, that we give the students of Georgia's public school systems the opportunity to study in an academic setting the literacy of the Bible and its impact on civilization.
This legislation would not make any class on the Bible mandatory at public schools, but it would shift the responsibility for defending the constitutionality of any Bible class from the local school boards to the state's Attorney General's office.
In other news, police raided a shop in Roswell, Georgia yesterday that was selling fake license tags along with other motor vehicle paperwork. State Tax Commissioner Bart Graham commented on the case, which has now been turned over to the fraud unit at the Department of Revenue.
My sense is that there has been tag fraud as long as there have been automobiles in Georgia. This is just one of the latest schemes because there's a heavier motivation for people to try to get a tag. That is, if you're here, whether you're legal or illegal, and you got to get to a job, and public transportation doesn't get you there, you need to get a tag on a car. This is just the latest scheme to do that. The great thing about the tax world, and the same way with motor vehicle world, is once it's done, you can't take it back. It gets recorded in so many different databases. And there's such a audit trail of what operators impacted each account that if there is somebody working on the inside, we'll be able to get back to their workstation and establish whether somebody else got their password or whether they did the work, if they were involved, which, again, we don't expect at this time, but also who was involved in it. Also, with the use of video surveillance cameras that are on virtually every establishment in the state anymore, once we identify a location and go back and look at security tapes, we're able to look back for common people, that may be the person bringing it to, in this case, the grocery store, that may also be visiting the county tag offices.
Commissioner Graham said he would keep us informed on any advancements they made in the investigation, including whether or not an inside source was involved in this operation in Roswell.
Well, if you own a pickup truck, you'll be interested in a proposal currently before the legislature. Truck drivers don't currently have to wear seat belts, but that may change by the end of this session. Identical bills in the House and Senate would remove an exemption that has been on the books for 42 years. J.R. Charles has more on this story.
The running joke is that former Speaker Tom Murphy drove a truck to the session and didn't like wearing his seatbelt. But it was originally passed for farmers who jumped in and out of their work trucks all day. That exemption would remain on the books, but all other passengers driving on public roads will be required to buckle up. Special Rules Chair Calvin Hill has chaired the subcommittee reviewing the House bill, and he says this may be the year all Georgians have to buckle up.
You know, I think one of the interesting things about this bill, it is a bipartisan type of bill. If you notice here at the press conference today, we had Democrats, we had Republicans, we had men, we had women, we had black, we had white. This is not a partisan, racial, or gender-specific bill. This is a bill designed to protect lives, and I think that you'll find the majority of the legislators are for it.
Easier said than done. Several legislators have tried to remove the exemption, but they've all failed year after year after year. I'm J.R. Charles for Lawmakers.
Now, Georgia is one of two states that exempt pickup trucks, the other being Indiana. Also, New Hampshire is the only state that does not require adults to wear a seatbelt.
Just before the 2006 legislative session, Governor Sonny Perdue pledged $234 million in state funds to local road projects. He calls the budget initiative Paving the Way Home. At the Joint Appropriations briefings today, Transportation Commissioner Harold Linenkohl outlined how that money will be allocated. It will be available through the department's Local Assistance Road Project and its State Aid Initiative.
There's a lot of interest in this Paving the Way Back Home project, a lot of support for it. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more on how that money can be spent and when would be the appropriate time for us to bring our counties up to take advantage of it.
We do have a formula for LARP, strict formula for our resurfacing program that tells us exactly how much we can put into each jurisdiction, whether it be unincorporated county or the cities. We do not have that strict of a formula on state aid. I do have a formula, but it's really a guide because, to be honest, construction costs so much. And if you've got a city, and I don't know any small town that's got a formula of $20,000, and that's not unreasonable. $20,000 won't buy you a shovel full of asphalt. So there's absolutely no way I can go buy a formula and help a small city. I've got to go in and say, okay, this need might be 100,000, it might be 150. But if we're not doing a lot with them, those folks, then we'll put it in there because they're not going to get anything otherwise.
Executive Director Doug Marchand of the Georgia Ports Authority also presented his agency's budget request to the committee today. Marchand emphasized his department's need to expand ports in Savannah and Brunswick to compete with other commercial ports around the world.
One of the most important factors in increasing GPA's ability to handle extra throughput is Container Berth 8. Container Berth 8 will extend the docks at the Port of Savannah at our Garden City terminal by almost 2,100 linear feet and the capacity of the terminal by 20%, creating over 11,000 new jobs as our projection. This year's request of $15.9 million in general obligation bonds will complete the funding for this vital project and actually allow the paving of 42 acres of storage space.
Also at today's budget briefing, State Corrections Commissioner James Donnell praised Governor Perdue's proposal to fund more prison beds.
Another good news story is the $45 million the governor put in the budget to expand the bed population. For so long, we've had to do things like furloughs and hiring freezes just to make the budget work. With this addition of the $45 million, we will be able to add approximately 4,400 additional beds. Now, I say 45. We believe that that number does not include an additional 3,000 or so beds that we're going to talk about down the line, some of which will come out of the private prisons. We'll explain that in detail as we go along in the budget. And these beds come at just the right time. 145 different county jails are currently 50 of those jails are over capacity, and we occupy 12 to 13% of the jail capacity. This type of stress on the system is something that this budget will allow us to take action against. The good news in the budget also is there are 470 private prison beds. We've always embraced our private prisons as partners. We know that they can, in many cases, deliver bed much quicker than we can. We're excited about that continued partnership. And because they have the infrastructure already there, they're going to deliver those 470 beds at a blended rate of $24.75 per day. I need to stop there. Again, $24.75 is what we're going to pay for the additional 470 beds as opposed to our $41 a day average.
Commissioner Donnell also said moving the Department of Corrections headquarters from Atlanta to Forsyth, Georgia would result in millions of dollars in savings.
Well, in his State of the State address last week, Governor Perdue mentioned creating a GBI meth force, a statewide plan to strengthen Georgia's fight against methamphetamine abuse and trafficking. The General Assembly passed legislation last year which aimed to help law enforcement crack down on clandestine meth labs. The governor hopes this year's initiative helps even more. Lawmakers David Zelski joins us live from the Capitol with more on these plans. David.
Well, in Wandy, Georgia Public Broadcasting is premiering a meth documentary on February 14th called The Georgia Meth Invasion. Now, Representative Jay Neal, who appears in the documentary, sponsored last year's legislation and is also involved with this year's meth force bill. Here's a clip from the upcoming documentary along with some additional comments from Representative Neal about this new legislation.
I love it, but I hate it.
It takes lives and it immediately ruins them.
The drug created
in them the monster that they became.
I don't trust nobody on mine. I mean, I don't care if God himself comes down beside me and says, hey, Jeremy, you know, I'm God. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. You know, you don't trust nobody.
In the rural areas, you have the mom and pop labs. In the larger metropolitan areas, you have the Mexican meth.
They'll do what it takes to protect their area and do what they have to keep the competition out.
We're going to fight this battle county by county, community by community, home by home, and life by life.
Crystal meth was the idol that I had been worshiping.
The Georgia General Assembly passed legislation in the spring of 2005 that put meth's key ingredient, pseudoephedrine, behind the counter. There was already a maximum number of pills that could be purchased, but this makes the drug harder to obtain, harder to steal.
We targeted the access to the supplies. We targeted law enforcement's ability to find those individuals who are manufacturing meth and give them some additional laws to go after them with.
The law also gives stores the option to place meth watch signs beside all products that may be used to manufacture the drug. Another approach that may be working.
They were busting multiple labs a week, certainly in the city of Lafayette. As of 2 weeks ago, they had not busted a meth lab since the law came in effect on July the 1st. So obviously we're seeing some real impact in northwest Georgia.
In the fall of 2005, the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse held a meth summit in Savannah, Georgia, where law enforcement, prevention specialists, and treatment providers once again shared ideas and strategies to fight the growing problem.
I think we are on the right track. That's the good news. I've seen what's happened in so many other states and how they are now having to play major catch-up and trying to go back. And I really feel like each of these is moving us to get out front, good prevention, good treatment to deal with the demand side, and then our law enforcement is definitely dedicated in helping us reduce the supply.
It is very, very important that all the disciplines in Georgia on the law enforcement side and the treatment side work together to come up with the strategies to handle the use of methamphetamine.
In Governor Perdue's 2006 State of the State address, he mentioned putting together a GBI meth force.
We're going to be able to have agents working undercover in the state of Georgia in the areas. I like the fact that it's a meth force and not a meth unit. So it's not assigned to a specific area, but instead you're going to see agents that are able to go across the state into the areas where you're seeing the most problems with meth. They're going to be going undercover, and they're going to be targeting not just little mom and pop labs, but they're going to be targeting distribution centers. They're going to be looking for places where there's some mid to upper level trafficking going on.
Now, once again, on February 14th, Georgia Public Broadcasting is dedicating an entire evening to educating the public about the dangers of meth, beginning with a Frontline special at 9 o'clock. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks for that report, David.
And a related story, Georgia Bureau of Investigation Director Vernon Keenan also spoke during today's budget hearings, and he mentioned the importance of funding Governor Perdue's GBI Meth Force initiative.
Item 7 calls for the establishment of a meth force to investigate methamphetamine-related crimes. I urge you to support the governor's recommendation. The 15 agents are desperately needed in the workforce of the GBI, and this funding would pay for their salaries, vehicles for the agents, and also their operating expenses. As you well know, methamphetamine has become a major problem in this state, and these 15 agents will be devoted towards combating the methamphetamine disaster which has come upon Georgia.
This Friday marks the 32nd anniversary of the Supreme Court's landmark Roe v. Wade decision. This year, the Georgia legislature will have the opportunity to debate several bills dealing with access to abortion. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman has a preview of some of those bills. Jesse.
Well, in Wandy, a bill has been filed by Senator Nancy Schaefer that would require all abortion clinics to make an ultrasound image of any fetus that is to be aborted and offer to show that image to the woman seeking the procedure. Senator Renee Unterman says she plans to refile a bill she had last year that would create punishment for the murder of a fetus.
When you're pregnant, you're more than one person. You're actually two people because you're carrying a baby inside of you. And if a woman is killed, unfortunately, you're not just killing that one person, but you're actually killing two people. And this bill allows that to happen, that when you go to court and things get processed, that you would actually be accountable for murdering 2 people.
Before a woman has an abortion, she will be given a ultrasound or a sonogram examination. That'll be prior to an abortion or even prior to a referral. So that is important. And as part of informed consent, each woman shall be given the opportunity to view the ultrasound or the sonogram examination that she has been given.
Now, many pro-choice activists say that it is an important time to be aware of abortion rights issues. Becky Rafter of NARAL Pro-Choice Georgia encourages citizens to speak out about these issues.
More important than ever that citizens and individuals come to the Capitol or contact their legislators in support of women's health bills.
Senator Renee Unterman says she will refocus her efforts on this issue after helping pass legislation requiring waiting periods for abortion last year. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Jesse.
When the General Assembly goes back into session on Monday, the Senate is expected to vote on the controversial voter ID bill. Today, the Senate Rules Committee met to set a short calendar for Monday.
We have 2 bills that we're going to look at for Monday's calendar. House Bill 970, liquid propane and natural gas state tax temporary exemption. The governor's bill there to help folks during this cold weather and trying to save some money that we can on heating. Good bill. I believe it is. And the second bill is a bill that it's Senator Schaefer's bill, David Schaefer's bill, and he has on that as well Senators Amarippa, Senator Reed, and Senator Moody. So it's a bipartisan bill that, from what I understand, takes care of some non-contiguous areas that were done because of Sandy Springs.
Now, the voter ID bill won't appear on the calendar. Since the House has amended that Senate bill, it simply requires a Senate vote to agree or disagree to the House changes.
State Senator Cecil Staton announced today that no powers of eminent domain will be created under the legislation he proposed 2 weeks ago. He discussed the goals of Senate Bill 414, the Rural Georgia Economic Development Act, at a press conference this morning.
So this is about jobs. This is about economic development. It's about creating infrastructure in the counties of Georgia that desperately need this. And that has been my motivation for this bill and the reason that I will fight as strongly as I can in the coming days and weeks to make sure that we pass Senate Bill 414.
Critics of the bill blasted the senator, claiming the bill was another partisan effort to diminish land rights of Georgians. Later in the day, Senator Staton addressed those claims at the Senate Economic Development Committee meeting.
I really think part of it's, a socialization problem, and I don't think being a policeman in this day and time is quite as popular as it was at another time in our history. When I came on, there were probably 2,000 to 3,000 applicants for 32 positions, and it was quite competitive. I don't see that now, and I don't know that that pay is going to help that substantially. It certainly would be an incentive. I read an article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the other day that many of you probably read that talked about the incentives that other agencies are offering. We've had some of our people leave.
That, of course, continuing testimony from today's budget hearings. Senate Bill 414 was referred today to subcommittee. If enacted, that legislation would take effect in January of 2007.
Now, what you just saw was Public Safety Commissioner Bill Hitchens testifying before the committee today. He addressed the need for more troopers on the roads. He stated that numbers may be down right now because their salaries are relatively low compared to other states. I don't know if we're going to have that tape ready for you yet. Continuing, though, even though Georgia's starting pay for troopers is competitive with other southeastern states, it's below the national average. Let's look at that tape now.
Incentives that other agencies are offering. We've had some of our people leave to go to other agencies because of incentives. They give them bonuses up front, more bonus in 18 months. One that I'm aware of even buys up some of the retirement time. So it's become very competitive, and if we're going to keep people, we have to. And this isn't just us. The GBI and other state law enforcement agencies are facing the same problem. we just work 24/7 in most places, and when we don't have sufficient people and close down, it becomes very apparent, and the public generally doesn't appreciate it.
Again, even though Georgia's starting pay for troopers is competitive with other southeastern states, it is well below the national average on raises. Commissioner Hitchens says this may be part of the reason troopers are transferring to other states. Meanwhile, Georgia's juvenile justice system may finally be in compliance with federal mandates issued in the 1990s. During budget briefings today, Juvenile Justice Commissioner Albert Murray says that he believes the facilities serving juvenile offenders are ready for inspection.
The remaining 9 facilities are considered long-term secure facilities, youth development campuses, YDCs, we use the acronym. Again, these 30 facilities make up the secure facilities that we operate throughout the state. We house juveniles on short-term placements, which would be up to 60 days. A number of juveniles who come into our system are considered regular 2-year commitments. We also have designated felons, which would be a 5-year commitment. We also have youngsters who are on superior court commitments that are being held. The maximum capacity for our 30 secure facilities, when these facilities are full, would be 2,607. Our secure facilities remain filled to capacity at most all times, sometimes over capacity. The department manages this population by assuring that a good classification system is in place, a system that assures there is some balance throughout our system and that there is safety and that there is security. It is these 30 facilities for which the department has been engaged in a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Justice now, U.S. Department of Justice, for quite some time. Since my appointment, I've given high priority to the completion of all requirements to be released from this long-standing MOA. At this time, as I speak with you today, it's my belief that the department has completed all requirements and stands ready for final inspection by the U.S. Department of Justice at whatever point in time they are ready to complete this process.
Meanwhile, spokesmen for Georgia's judges, district attorneys, and public defenders were also heard at the budget hearings today. One common issue for all 3 was the need for cost of living adjustments. Judge Daniel Kersey mentioned that both the executive and legislative branches received these cost of living adjustments last year, but the judicial branch did not. Lawmakers will not be seen tomorrow night because of the Georgia General Assembly. They will not be in session. Will return Monday, January 23rd at 7 p.m. with all the latest from under the Gold Dome. If you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Chick in a Chair. That's coming up next here on GPB.
Well, that's our broadcast for this, the second day of budget briefings here at the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wandy Lawson.
I'm Gerald Bryant. Tune in at 5:30. Maybe we'll get it right. We'll be back Monday, January 23rd. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia.